Hello and welcome to the Heaven Bound Sunday School class at the First General Baptist Church in Truman. This will be the third week in a row that we've studied the prophecy of Isaiah. We'll also be reading a few verses of scripture from Matthew chapter 25. Now the focus of the scripture this week is on fasting. Now the essence of fasting is self-denial, and it reminds us of being in complete dependence on God. In the first few verses of chapter 58, we find the people crying out to God, questioning why he doesn't seem to take notice when they fast and suffer. God points out that their dramatic gestures only draw attention to themselves. While they go through the motions of righteous people, they quarrel and fight with their neighbors. God's response to his people then is just as relevant to his people today. We'll read that scripture beginning in the 58th chapter of Isaiah. It says, "Is not this the kind of fasting I have chosen, to loose the chains of injustice and untie the cords of the yoke, to set the oppressed free and break every yoke? Is it not to share your food with the hungry and to provide the poor wanderer with shelter? When you see the naked, to clothe them, and not to turn away from your own flesh and blood? Then your light will break forth like the dawn, and your healing will quickly appear. Then your righteousness will go before you, and the glory of the Lord will be your rear guard. Then you will call, and the Lord will answer. You will cry for help, and he will say, 'Here am I.' If you do away with the yoke of oppression, with the pointing finger and malicious talk, and if you spend yourselves in behalf of the hungry and satisfy the needs of the oppressed, then your light will rise in the darkness, and your night will become like the noonday." Now, the scripture from Matthew is in chapter 25, as I said earlier. These verses say, "Then the king will say to those on his right, 'Come, you who are blessed by my Father. Take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me.' Then the righteous will answer him, 'Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you?' The king will reply, 'Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me.'" Now in verse 6, which is the first verse that we read, God was not pleased with the fasting that his people were doing at that time. He felt like they were just going through the motions. It was more ritual than actually focusing on God. Now, fasting by definition is a religious custom whereby believers voluntarily abstain from something that forces them to practice self-control. Now, the whole purpose of fasting is to decrease self and place a greater focus on God. Fasting with a true heart shows an earnest desire to seek God's help and guidance. We tend to think of fasting as going without food, but fasting can involve anything that we dedicate to God. Doing without TV or missing a concert in order to spend time alone with God is fasting. The key here is to spend time alone with God. Doing without a favorite food or abstaining from a favorite hobby is not true fasting unless you use that time to spend in extra prayer and devotion with God. Now, you can think of time spent with God in comparison to time that you spend with a friend. When friends need to be together, they will cancel all other activities to make that possible. There's nothing magical about fasting. It's just one way of telling God your priority at that moment is to be alone with Him. Your schedule has been cleared, laying down all else to fulfill your priority to Him. And God tells the people some of the activities that they could be doing when fasting. And they all involve taking care of others, assisting with their spiritual needs, and assisting with their emotional needs, and assisting with their physical needs. Now, God, in the Scripture, says He wants His people to tear down injustice, to free the oppressed, to feed the hungry, shelter the homeless, and to clothe the naked, and also to take care of your own flesh and blood. It's very important. Take care of your own family, because in God's view, if you don't take care of your own family, what hope is there for the widow or for the orphan or for the stranger? Because you're not likely to care for them if you're not going to care for your own family. And after this came promises for a job well done. If you do those things that God asks you to do, He says your light will break forth like the dawn. Light has always been associated with right conduct and knowledge. And when that light breaks through, healing quickly appears. Righteousness will go before you. The glory of the Lord will be your rear guard. And after this, the Lord will answer when you call. When you cry for help, God will say 3 words, "Here I am." He's going to provide comfort. He's going to provide assurance. And God says if you do away with the yoke of oppression and do away with the pointing finger and do away with malicious talk, and spend time helping those who need help, well, then your light will rise in the darkness so strongly that night will be like noon. Now, in an earlier passage, Isaiah quoted God's words to the Israelites. Now, this New Testament passage that we read from Matthew has Jesus Himself stressing to His followers the same importance of serving others that God had shared so many years ago. What seems so insignificant to others, God views as worthy of honor. In fact, He tells His friends that doing just the smallest kindness to someone you may typically walk by is like doing it for Him. Making sure we pay attention to the opportunities around us to minister is crucial. Who needs help? Who needs guidance? Who needs Jesus? We must find them and then serve them as Jesus is light to the world. Now, naturally, we tend to hold back from helping people we think are simply preying on the kindness of others. We fear they will take advantage of us, not use our gifts to address their needs, or even take us for granted and ask for more. Unfortunately, some really are doing just that. But notice, Jesus did not address the attitude of the needy, only the heart of the giver. The issue isn't about whether a person is worthy of help or not. The issue is whether we are willing to be used at the moment.